Welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club's Fireside Chat. The club's purpose is to engage the power of diverse worldwide talent to accelerate the global evolution to Industry 4.0. We accomplish this by hosting and supporting respectful, thoughtful, and interdisciplinary open conversations and creating quality content on wide-ranging Industry 4.0 topics to expand the reach of our community. We're glad you've decided to join us today for our Fireside Chat with Ty Bennet. Ty is going to be sharing his experience with the principles that make successful deployment of Industry 4.0. My name is Mike Ungar, and I am an Industry 4.0 co-founder. For the past 3 years, I've been a focal point business coach and executive coach, and prior to that, I spent 35 years at Michelin North America in a variety of continuous improvement, operations, finance, and human resources role. My co-host today is Mike Yost. Mike, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you. And Ty, thanks for being here with us today. As Mike said, my name is Mike Yost. I'm one of the co-founders of the Industry 4.0 Club. Have spent my entire 30-plus year career in the industrial automation, industrial software space. I founded a company called Bennet a few years ago, and our goal is to help manufacturers find the help they're looking for in this domain of smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0. Such a big fan of Ty that I named the company after him, but just a coincidence. So I'm really excited to have Ty here with us today and see where the conversation goes.
Thanks, Mike. Let me introduce our guest, Ty Bennet. So Tyler describes himself as a servant leader who will do everything possible to make sure his associates are successful. He uses a collaborative leadership style that brings together multiple viewpoints to accomplish objectives. Something I noticed, I think, an interesting quote from his LinkedIn profile that I'd like to share. Ty says, "I'm much like a lens that focuses light." That's really a cool quote. So Ty is part owner and vice president of manufacturing for Lester Building Systems. He's worked for Lester for the past 8 years, beginning to assume an ownership role in the last few years. Prior to Lester, he worked for AGCO Machinery, supporting supply chain activities, and he was there for 8 years. One thing that Ty shared with me that you won't see on his LinkedIn profile was that he actually managed a Krispy Kreme donut factory for a while. For those listening, if you haven't had Krispy Kreme, by the way, you got to put that on your bucket list.
Yes.
Anyway, Ty, thanks for joining us. It's really great to have you here. I know we know you're out doing conferences with your customers, so we know that taking the time away is quite a commitment. So thanks for that. As we get started, for those that are listening on LinkedIn Live, if you have a question for Ty, please share it in the comment section, and we're going to try to answer it during our time together today. So, Ty, to get us started, tell us a bit about what Lester Building Systems really does, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, thanks for having me. Lester Building Systems is a post frame manufacturer. We have been in business about 75 years, producing and shipping into 38 states across the country. Got about 170 dealers across the U.S. I'm actually at one of the dealer conferences right now, taking a little time out. We specialize in post-frame manufacturing, assembly. We actually have some crews. We'll build some of our own buildings as well as through our dealer network. Everything from residential to commercial. If you need a building, call Lester's. We have professional engineers on staff, fully engineered buildings from start to finish. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I have to ask, from donuts to buildings, what caused you to actually switch from manufacturing donuts to getting into manufacturing equipment and now building systems?
Yeah, you talk a little bit about everybody's always looking for their dream job. I can tell you, working for Krispy Kreme is a dream job. It's all downhill from there. You can't go wrong. Your customer base, nobody leaves Krispy Kreme angry. No matter how bad of a day they're having, they come in, you give them a free donut, and all of a sudden they cheer up. So that was actually a college gig. Did it while I was working on my MBA, and had the opportunity to potentially take over one of their shops right as I was finishing up my MBA. And we were living out of state, my wife and I, and had a little one on the way, and decided we wanted babies to know grandparents. And unfortunately, there aren't any Krispy Kremes in Central Illinois, so I went out on a job search and came across AGCO.
Super. So I guess they say the rest is history. Huh?
Yeah, the rest is history. I still
That's-
still frequent Krispy Kreme whenever I have the opportunity.
Ditto.
One light post us as well. And when that light comes on, saying the donuts are ready, it's like the line gets long. So
It's a
good.
special experience. I'll tell you, I don't know another product that you can produce for a nickel and sell for $1 and still have your customers think they're getting a good deal.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty good. So maybe we can come back to Lester for a little bit. So I wanted to kind of focus in on Lester. So you've been there 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share some of the significant changes that you've made in how you manufacture at Lester in those 8 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So probably the most significant change has taken place in my tenure. We implemented a new ERP system. That was actually the second one of those I've gone through. ERP integrations. Anybody who's done it or is listening, and they can tell you that's a significant undertaking. So we went live with Epicor in 2017. We were running Bond 4 prior to that. And much like the other legacy ERP systems that are out there, it just hadn't been maintained or updated or upgraded for a number of years. So to go from that to a new cutting edge system, it's a pretty big jump, not just in software, but all of your associates, getting them on board. And I don't know what the stat is as far as percentage of companies that don't make it through ERP system go live, but it's high. And there's a reason, because it's hard. So that's probably the number one change that we undertook. That was in 2017. Since then, we've implemented a lot of things. Probably the one that's most interesting to this group, we ended up partnering with a company called Raven Telemetry out of Canada. And they've helped us integrate shop floor operations and put them onto a digital platform, so that even while I'm sitting here hundreds of miles away from a manufacturing facilities, I can see in real time how they're functioning. I know what kind of day they're having. And actually, without even talking to anybody, kind of know the reasons why it's a good day or a bad day. So that's been revolutionary for us.
So if we could stick with that for a second, right? So that gets us obviously into the conversation about Industry 4.0, and we're certainly familiar with Raven. So I always like to ask from a manufacturer's perspective, like, what does it mean? Like, what does Industry 4.0 look like to you? We know what the analysts say and the tech. Right? But what does it look like to you?
So you hear Industry 4.0 or 4.0, and there's a lot of buzzwords that are out there in the world. To me, from where I sit, it's really just it's modernizing and updating systems that have been around for a long time, and bringing them into the digital age that we live in. I mean, I can get on and see where a package is coming from Amazon, and know maybe down to the minute when they're going to be at my house. But I've got these huge manufacturing facilities that are just producing kind of blindly, and how'd they do yesterday? Well, we wrote it on a piece of paper. Let me go see if I can find it. And that's a frustrating position to be in for manufacturers.
Sure. Well, and then from your perspective, Mike's introduction, he talked about your collaborative leadership style and managing multiple viewpoints to accomplish objectives and things like that, right? If you don't have data to do that, it makes it challenging, right?
Yeah, one of my early managers, he would always say, "In God we trust, all others bring data," because everything else is just a feeling, and feelings, you can get them wrong pretty easily, but it's pretty hard to argue with numbers.
So you mentioned in the transition from one ERP system to the new, not only the technology issues but the people issues. How is it for the data collection systems, the plant floor systems, like you're talking about with Raven, and the people using those types of systems?
Yeah, it's a lot of the same challenges, especially in today's era. Manufacturers, employers have gotten a bad rap for trying to use lean to get rid of people or to reduce their head count. And you really have to instill a culture that helps people understand, I'm not trying to replace you. I'm trying to make you more productive. I'm trying to make your job easier. You don't like that your machines broke down all day long, every other day. Well, if we can get data around that, it's a lot easier to put a case study or it's a lot easier to convince an accountant if I go to him and say, this is costing us X number of dollars if we don't fix it. And sure, there's a dollar amount that we have to spend up front. But without that data, it's just like, man, this sucks. My machine's broken all the time. And the accountant's like, so what do I get if I fix it? And if you can't go to them with that, you don't have anything.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, the nothing but the facts, ma'am, as they would say. So that's fantastic.
Yep.
No, it's true. So one of the things we had talked about before in preparation for today's conversation was how many long tenured employees are at Lester.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And change management is not easy. So how do you manage change in an environment where you've got long tenured employees? How have you found that? Because they sort of, a lot of them the risk is they take the approach of this is kind of how we have always done it. Why do we need to change? How do you deal with that?
So I for a number of years, I've had a poster that hangs wherever I reside in my career of a guy running from a bull, and it says, just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it's not incredibly stupid. And so it's a double-edged sword, because your tenured employees, you can leverage them into keeping you from going off the rails, because a lot of them have seen all kinds of different ideas come through the organization, and you'll get the feedback of, we've seen that before, we tried that before, that didn't work, or why would we change it if it works now? And then some of that you have to convince them that what we're doing now doesn't work, or maybe it works but it's hanging on by a thread. There's a lot of human glue holding everything together, and we need to systemize that so that whenever Jim Bob decides to retire, the whole place doesn't shut down. So I mean, a lot of it, Lester's has a lot of long-term employees, 30, 40. We actually just had a gentleman's, I believe, 50th year. At the plant. 2/3 of the time the company's been in existence, he's been an employee. And you've got the challenge where you got this younger person coming in trying to tell him how to do his job. So it's not a bad idea as a leader to spend a little bit of time and learn what's going on before even trying to approach any type of change. Get your hands around what they're doing and figure out what they're doing that does work, and maybe leave that alone, at least initially. But more than that, Lester's has a lot of good people that want things to work better. And they know that in some cases, a lot of these people have only worked in our organization. They haven't had careers outside. So they're open to new ideas as long as you can prove to them that there's value in them. One of the things that prior life, we had trying to undertake a lean transformation, but taking it with the approach that this is what you're going to do, and not really explaining why we were changing things. And as soon as you walk away, that process just falls apart. You have to be able to give something to people that makes sense and that makes their job better. And then it's a lot easier to sustain when you have a bunch of cheerleaders rather than people trying to sabotage you when you turn around. So
can I just ask a little bit about the organization, right? Obviously you're part owner, you're the VP of manufacturing, right? Mm-hmm. So we talk a lot or hear a lot about people as to whether these types of initiatives, specifically in our conversations around the technology deployment and stuff, are, project based, if they're strategic, who owns it in the organization. You being in the role that you are from a leadership perspective, how do you, do people do it because you're the boss and you said so, or how do you handle sort of the organizational side of things in managing the points you were just raising?
Yeah. So a lot of your informal leaders know there's something that needs to be better. They may not know what the solution is. Sometimes they come to you with the solution. And part of that, you have to have an open enough mind that you're willing to listen to what they're bringing you. And maybe you know where you want to go, but you don't know what roads it takes to get there. So a big part of it is being able to talk and listen, get feedback from people on, well, I agree with you. This is broken. What can we do to make it better? And a lot of times people will present, and I'll tell you what, it's a whole lot easier to implement something if somebody's coming to you with the idea. Then you already have a cheerleader right off the bat before you even start. So.
That's excellent. That's a good point.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So, this process of helping folks move let's say, move into the future with you. We know when change can be difficult, and I'm wondering if you ever run into the situation where you had some folks that just couldn't travel that journey with you. Have you found that? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, if you look back over my career, there have been people that they just reach a point that they don't want to. A good example of this, if you were to look at the industry of, so we have a fleet of trucks that deliver our product, and not necessarily at Lester's, but the industry a number of years ago went to electronic logs, and prior to that, everybody had multiple logs inside their truck, and nobody was running legal, even though they could all present a book to you that said that they were. And we actually had a driver who told me, once you guys put e-logs into the trucks, I'm stepping out. And we agreed. He actually came and worked inside the plant for us for a little while, but a majority of our long-term truck drivers, when that change went through, once they got used to the e-logs, it's actually better because now they don't spend their whole Saturday trying to make everything jive. So that's on the up and up. So that's just one of those things that people, the other thing that's bad about change is that a lot of times the unknown frightens people. And if you can make the unknown more known, change is a lot easier. If I were to look at other examples, I mean, sure, there have been people that are just obstinate. And those are people that the organization cannot fail because of one person not wanting to change.
Right.
And you may have to move them out of the way. But generally speaking, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go to work today and do a bad job. Most everybody wants their place of employment to succeed. And they may have different visions of what success is. But if you can get everybody aligned, it pretty much works itself out.
I'm curious about this. Just popped into my head. Like you mentioned the e-logs, right? Mm-hmm. And how much of sort of the problem solving or the opportunities you talked about, people identifying fixes and stuff like that, are you looking at things sort of at a systems level and trying to sort of architect the overall business? You talked about the ERP, you talked about the data collection, you have all this stuff, or are most of the things that you're dealing with more like at the equipment level or at a particular process level and say, oh, we can improve this particular process versus we're looking sort of end to end overall with our systems?
To answer that question, it's a little bit hard because each situation is unique, but I will say there's a lot to be garnered from going down to your frontline people. At one point when I was at AGCO, before it was owned by AGCO, and I had a weekly meeting called the Stupid List, and just basically told all the people who work for me, there's probably things you're doing every day that's stupid. Let's put it on a list and see if we can actually fix it. John Wooden, one of my favorite case studies. You go back and look. Yeah. Yeah, we had the stupid, and we did that for 2 years, and we fixed a lot of things that John Wooden, the first day of practice, would bring his basketball players out on the court and teach them how to tie their shoes. And these are people that are highly recruited basketball players. And it could be insulting to be like, dude, this guy's trying to show me how to tie my shoes. But then he found out that if he didn't do that, people have been tying their shoes their whole life, but they tie them too tight, or they don't tie them tight enough. They get an ankle, they twist their ankle, or they tie them too tight and they get blisters that show up on their feet. So that was their first practice, was how do you tie your shoes? And there's a lot of things that go on in an organization that get overlooked on a daily basis that it just becomes part of life. And your employees get used to that. They're just like, well, I just always have to do that because that's just what I have to do. It's like, yeah, but if you were brand new in the organization and you were trying to explain this to you, do you have an explanation other than that's just the way it is? Because if that's just the way it is, that's just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it's not incredibly stupid. Yeah. And you can drive a lot of change systemically from the ground up just by finding some of those silly things. There are times you need to start at the top and look systemically down. But probably if you look over the course of my career, a lot of times I start at the root and work up.
Well, I spent a couple of years in high school on the Stupid List, but I have a feeling that was a different.
That was probably a different list.
it's neat when you talk about bottom up a little bit, starting from the bottom and then coming up rather than the top down. You also mentioned to me, and that's really a principle of lean. And you've done a lot of lean work in your factory, as you've told me before.
Yep.
Can you talk for a minute about how your perspective on how lean and Industry 4.0 come together?
Yeah. So I think from just where I sit, it's just an extension of lean. So a lot of what you're doing with lean is common sense stuff. You're trying to take out waste. And so a good example, Raven, when my machines would break down before, operator had to go try to find somebody to fix the thing. And that may take, who knows? I mean, you're wandering around the factory, you're calling the radio, you're calling the phone. Now it's a simple button push. And maybe I can even fix it before it breaks down. That's a novel idea rather than waiting until it breaks and then trying to go fix it. What can we do to be more proactive and make sure we have parts in place to fix that when it goes down? So even if it does go down, you're minimizing the impact. So to me, they're an extension of each other. They're not competing ideas. They're not or ideas. It's an and idea. You implement one inside the other.
So I think what I heard you say was eliminating waste, whether you do it organizationally or with an Industry 4.0 tool, it's all about waste elimination.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's really what it is. It's how can we get better with the resources are harder and harder to come by. And I don't know that this really fits into this question, but I'll cram it in there anyway. There's a certain amount of, so everybody is competing over the same pool of resources for employees, and nobody wants to work for an idiot. And if you can bring a new employee in and they feel like you build some credibility right off the bat if your systems aren't from 1962. So there's something to be said for that too.
That's great. Thinking about you, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Thinking about bringing in new employees and your long tenured employees, how do you integrate those new folks into your factory? What are the things that you do? Because I've heard people say, well, we just do OJT or we do training, or how do you handle the culture side? How do you handle the culture side with your new folks?
Yeah. So we've made it a point now that my leaders, the first day somebody's in the plant, spend some time getting to know that person, figure out what their situations are. The Stephen Covey, he always says with people, slow is fast and fast is slow. And it seems like, why do I care about that guy's situation? I just need him to go run my saw. But there are things that if you spend a little bit of time with employees and they understand that they're not just everywhere they go, nobody cares about their sick kid or the fact that they're a single dad trying to provide for, and if you can build a human connection with people, and then help your employees to build that same human connection, it makes things a lot. Fast is slow and slow is fast. And if you try to go fast on the front end, you're going to go through a lot more people on the back end. It's just the way it is.
That's a good comment. So if we kind of return back to Industry 4.0, you mentioned your work with Raven to improve the operational efficiency of your equipment. Have you done other things with respect to Industry 4.0 inside your factory?
So we've recently implemented a piece of software called Limble for the maintenance side of the world. It is an asset tracking software. Prior to, obviously, we have our financials, so we know what department we're spending money on. You can code stuff, but to get down to each of your pieces of equipment and know what that specific piece of equipment's costing you, we did not have that granularity. So Limble has been the most recent upgrade we've done. We undertook that April of last year. I've been very, very happy with that integration.
What does it provide you exactly? You say cost per equipment.
Does
it help you your reliability, or does it really just what does it track there?
So it's multifaceted. You basically you put all your assets in that you have across all three, in our case, 3 manufacturing locations. And then we actually have a little QR code that we stick on each machine that our operators, when they're having a problem, they pull out their smartphone. That QR code takes them to a work order. They can enter, this machine's been squealing for the last couple days. Maybe you should say. So historically, our maintenance plan had been pretty informal. I'd be out walking around the shop floor and the operator stop me and say, "Hey, Tyler, next time you see the maintenance guy, tell him that," and of course I have the best of intentions and I take off into the office. I get a phone call. Boop, it's gone. And so then the next time I'm out walking around, the guy catches me again. "Hey, did you? Oh, I forgot. I'll tell him this time." And I write it on a sticky note. Then I tell him and he forgets. And so it turns into this thing. Everybody has great intentions, but our human shortcomings, unfortunately, hold us back. So it's really helped on formalizing that process so that work orders go into the system immediately when we know there's a problem. They stay out there until they're addressed. It also has a calendar side of it. Limble does that. You can set up preventative maintenance schedules instead of just running something till the wheels fall off. Maybe check the bearings every couple months and change the oil in the thing before it becomes a major issue. So it also has a parts list that allows us to make sure we have backups on all of our critical parts. All of that was informally handled before. Whiteboards, pieces of paper. So
I guess I'm curious, Ty, from your perspective, maybe 2 points. I guess the main question I want to ask is if you have advice for companies that want to get started, like what would you recommend for them? And then I guess the question I would ask sort of before you answer that is like, where do you consider yourself on like when it comes to Industry 4.0? If we held you up as an example and said, Ty's one of those people to listen to and follow and emulate, would you say, yep? Or would you say, oh, geez, maybe not, I'm pretty early in my journey too.
Yeah, I would say we're still pretty early in the journey. We're certainly not. We don't have a digital twin. We're still a long way from being the standard bearer. But I would say we've definitely made strides. And anybody who's working on it, it seems daunting when you try to go jump out there off that cliff. But just take it a little bit at a time. There's always something that you can improve, and I think that's the other piece, the lean piece, the continuous improvement. If you think you're there, somebody out there is already getting better than you right now.
Well, one thing I would say to you personally, and then to others, because I had the opportunity to meet Ty last fall. He spoke at an event, and the fact that you're out speaking, that you're doing this, that you're networking, that you're willing to share. I mean, our platform is all about trying to help each other and drop down the formal barriers between somebody who has knowledge and somebody who needs it. So I think it's very encouraging to see someone like yourself who takes the time out of a very, very busy schedule to share what you know. So I think you're probably farther along than you give yourself credit for, and I would recommend to people to emulate what you do in putting yourself out there.
It's always easy to get down on your organization because you know where you are, you know where your shortcomings are. And it's always a good idea to spend a little bit of time and reflect back, because a lot of the changes aren't huge step changes. They're little incremental changes, and you have to go back and remind yourself where you've come from and where you are now. Yeah. Otherwise, it gets pretty disheartening.
Sure.
You know what? One of the things that you talked about getting started, I know your plant's in the middle of central Illinois, and I would say relatively rural, right?
Yep.
And so a lot of small to mid-sized manufacturers do struggle to get started, and they look for help. Where do you find your help in your part of the country?
Yeah, so Raven specifically, we caught on with them a number of years ago, and they've been instrumental in going live. So just a little bit about their specific solution. I'm sure there are other companies out there. I've always told Martin Cloak is their CEO, and I've told him we're not your biggest customer, but we're certainly your biggest fan, because they gave us an out-of-the-box solution that was affordable. So all the equipment that we're hooking these things to, each one of them, the feedback on it is unique. In some cases, I'm measuring a motor spinning. Some cases, I'm measuring a shear cutting. a board passing by an electronic eye. And that certainly, we're small enough, we didn't have that expertise in-house. So Raven was able, and I won't say we didn't have the expertise in-house. We have a couple of associates that have really stepped up and have learned and bridged that gap that we didn't have. But there are certainly companies out there. Everybody wants to help you for exchange of some green stuff. Really, if you look around, though, in today's day and age, there's so much information available out there, even organizations like this, that if you have the desire to learn something, you'll be able to learn it, even in the middle of Podunk, Illinois.
Well, so what you mentioned, it's interesting. So you yourself had to take the initiative to learn these things then. Is how you got into this. Is that what the bottom line?
Yeah, that's basically where it is. I mean, obviously, if your company has unlimited funds, you'll be able to do anything without much effort. But if you're on a budget, you're going to have to maybe take the hard way.
So do you have in your area in Central Illinois, is there an MEP that you can go to for help, or a community college, or other manufacturers that you're part of a network? I mean, what's it look like for you in your landscape?
That's a good point. I should have mentioned that. There's a local community college just 15 miles to our west, and they have I don't know if they're the only one in the state, but they call themselves the Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Center, and they've come in and done training in our facility on a number of occasions. And anytime we have technical issues, they have a number of experts, maybe not on staff, but they can at least, they're great to network with and can help guide which direction to head.
This might be a slightly unfair question to put you on the spot with Ty here, but we're always looking for how do we serve you? Like we really, the manufacturers, the folks that are producing products, are the folks that we really want to make that connection with and help. So is there anything you can think of that as a club, right, as this group of loosely aligned and connected and widely dispersed folks, is there anything you can think of that we could do that would be a help to you?
The hardest part of trying to help somebody in manufacturing is getting their attention. I like to use the analogy. Everybody's always too busy driving to stop and fill up for gas. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that the fires of the day always seem to rule everybody's life. And a lot of people don't think they almost get in this hopeless cycle where that's just life. It's just going to be, I'm going to come into work today and whatever fire is burning is where I'm going to spend my time. And to be able to get people to step back from that and say that this actually can get better. I don't have any magic bullet of how you reach those people, because sending them an email is just another ding in the inbox, and then they're unsubscribing or they're deleting you. I was on the Chamber of Commerce board for a couple of years, and with a couple of other manufacturers, and it seems like it doesn't matter. We're building buildings, they're making insulation or whatever they're doing. Everybody has the same. The machine shop guy, nobody can get employees. Everybody has some burning fire every day. Even during the chamber meetings, we're all checking our phones and putting out whatever fire is burning behind us. So it's a tough industry to break into, and you just gotta, if you can give people a sense of hope that it can be a rewarding career and you can make things better.
Well, and I would say for us, I agree completely. Like, getting manufacturers' attention is really, talk about that last mile to the manufacturer, right? That's the most difficult part of all this. But you're probably the shining example of how we do that best, right? So we have plenty of vendors, plenty of really smart people who have done a lot of great things, right? And analysts that know the business value and that kind of stuff. But if a manufacturer is going to take the time to listen or respond to something, it's probably going to be to hear another manufacturer speak.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So we appreciate what you're doing.
I feel their pain.
That's good. And I appreciate you sharing. I think the thing about what you mentioned, the local community college, whether it's the local community college or the MEP or another manufacturer, you talked about your peers. I think there's always people you can talk to. And I think the the main challenge, I guess, is maybe what I hear you saying is, look up long enough to reach out to those folks and they'll be there to help you. Is that a good way to say it?
Yeah, that's what it is. If you go out looking for it, you can find help and you can get better.
So we've been talking for a good bit of time about just your experiences and stuff. And I guess I want to come back around to maybe the title of our conversation today, talking about the key principles for success and driving Industry 4.0, but overall operational excellence. Can you kind of summarize for me, if how would you summarize maybe 2 or 3 of those as being like the things to do, the principles?
Yeah. So, I guess just a summary. It's an interesting time in which we live, that there are more resources available than there have ever been before, and it feels like we get mediocre results from a lot of the inputs that we add. So I guess as a leader, if you're trying to go down this path, look for things that work. There's a lot of shiny things out there that aren't necessarily going to drive results. And prior careers, I lived in a world where people lived and died by metrics, and metrics are important. And overall, if something's not measured, you have no chance of changing it. But we would make a lot of silly decisions just to try to hit a month-end goal or a quarter-end goal or a year-end goal, and it wasn't in the best interest of the organization in the long term. So really, I'm in a bit different position now because obviously I'm an owner. So the number one thing is keeping Lester going for the long term, not just getting through this month or this quarter. But managers, I think, as a society, we've gotten away from a lot of the common sense things that really everybody's looking for an easy way through things, and sometimes it just takes hard work and go out and find the answers. And so the thing I would say to everybody who's trying to get better or to get started, go find the dumb things your organization is doing and stop doing them. I mean, that's really where it's at, because I guarantee there's something dumb you're doing right now, and there's a better way, especially in today's world.
Good. Very good. Thank you for that. Thank you for those thoughts. So we've reached close to the end of our talk with Ty, and again, we want you to let you get back to your clients. But Mike, do you have any final thoughts before we just pass it to Ty one more time?
Yeah, I mean, I just love to hear the grounded perspective that Ty brings, and I appreciate that very much. And I think I took a whole bunch of notes here, but he talks about common sense, focus on results, right, and focus on the people, right. And so if you're pouring into your people, and then you're implementing improvements, you're modernizing, et cetera, to help drive a better experience for the people, driving results. I think in the end that's that long-term outlook that Ty talked about that I think is so important. So my takeaway would be to have that long-term outlook, focus on your people, and then the rest of the stuff just aligns.
Yeah,
on that.
The technology the technology's out there.
Yeah,
but it doesn't. The weakest link is your humans that are trying to use it, and you have to get them on board, or else none of the rest of it matters.
Right.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Ty, do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up for the day?
I don't think so. I thank you for the time, and excited to keep going forward.
I want to thank you as well. Again, I think you said it at the end quite well. For those that have been listening for the last 40 minutes or so, most of the conversation has been around people, not technology.
Right.
And that truly is the message, I guess, for us to leave in terms of, the principle for success is really focus on the people, almost more so than the technology. It's an interesting.
The technology is important. I don't want to downplay that, but if you have your people aligned with your goals, the technology it'll solve itself.
Just support you. Yeah, super. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I want to thank you, Ty and Mike, for joining us for this very insightful discussion. And also thanks to everybody who's been listening to us in the audience as well. If you like these sort of conversations, please look for them on LinkedIn Live or LinkedIn Audio through our Industry 4.0 Club or group page. We host conversations on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, alternating topics around the themes of women in manufacturing, the future of manufacturing, fireside chats with an industry leader like Ty, and the people, process, and culture. Please join our LinkedIn page as well, or visit our website at www.industry40club.com. So again, thank you, Ty. Thanks, Mike. And I wish everybody a great rest of the day.
Thanks, guys.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.